IFAF Training Tape 2021. Shift illegale. Regola 2.22.1. Shift. Articolo 1. A. Uno shift è un cambio simultaneo di posizione o di stance da parte di due o più giocatori d'attacco dopo che la palla è ready for play prima dello snap in un'azione di scrimmage down. B. Lo shift finisce quando tutti i giocatori sono stati fermi per almeno un intero secondo. C. Lo shift continua se uno o più giocatori sono in movimento prima della fine dell'intervallo di un intero secondo. Regola 7.1.2. Shift e falsa partenza. Articolo 2.a. Shift. Dopo un huddle oppure uno shift e prima dello snap, tutti i giocatori della squadra A devono fermarsi completamente e rimanere fermi nelle loro posizioni per almeno un intero secondo prima che venga effettuato lo snap della palla, senza alcun movimento di piedi, corpo, testa oppure braccia. Regola 7.1.4.c. Shift illegale. C. Shift illegale. Allo snap la squadra A non può eseguire uno shift illegale. Mofo 6.1. Quando è in dubbio. 14. La pausa di un secondo non è stata rispettata. Mofo 13.2. Giochi di scrimmage base. Linesman e line judge. 5. Osservate le shift illegali. La squadra A non si è mai settata, oppure non c'è stata la pausa di un secondo dopo un movimento simultaneo di più di un giocatore della squadra A.
In this first example, we're looking at the slot back here at the closest to the camera, and as he goes into motion, and here we know he's going to be in motion when the ball is snapped, but before he goes into motion or at the same time, if we're looking at the tackle and the guard on this side, they go from a 2-point to a 3-point right there, and that is simply too much. When they change position from a 2-point position to a 3-point position at the same time, as right now we've got 3 players moving, and as we all know, when more than one player moves, then everybody has to stop, which doesn't happen here. So this is something that we need to catch, and the only one who really has a good shot at catching this is the wing on this side of the field, because he is focused on everybody on his side of the ball. The umpire may see the guard do this move. The referee or the center judge may see the tackle go down, but they won't have a good feeling for when that happens in relation to the slot back. On this play, we're looking at both of the wing backs, but if we start on the left side with A29, and he does maybe he's supposed to go in motion, but that is a little jerky, and then he stops. And the reason he stops, we'll see if we look at the wingback on the right side, because he does pretty much the same move. So whether one of them was supposed to go in motion and then they both see the other one go in motion and then they stop, I don't know. But in any case, this is certainly too much movement to let go. If we could, I'm perfectly fine with this being a false start, just because both of these movements you can interpret as being jerky, flinchy, simulating the start of the play, but at the very least this should be an illegal shift. Same team, maybe even the same wingbacks, but compare what they do on this play. Now, first of all, this is just a lot of shifting around. Now everybody sets, and then they both move. But in this situation, this is a little bit more soft, a little bit more mellow, the way they move. So I'm perfectly fine with this being an illegal shift, which it needs to be. But as opposed to the other one that was more towards a false start, this is correctly called an illegal shift simply because they're both moving, but it doesn't the same way, doesn't simulate the beginning of a play. On this play, we're looking at the slot back and the wing back, so A2 and A84 away from the camera. And A2 is going to go into motion, and as he does that, A84 is going to move his feet just a little bit, just so we know what we're looking for. So right there, technically we have two players moving here. In real life, we would want this to be a little bigger before we want this called as an illegal shift. I mean, this is not something that simulates the start of the play. It's not something where the defense will think that now the ball is being snapped. It doesn't mess up any coverage. It really doesn't do anything for Team B that this happens. So we're fine with this very, very small movement of his feet and upper body by A84. It really needs to be a little bit bigger than this to rise to the level of an illegal shift. In this last example, the slot back away from the camera is going to go into motion, but we really want to pay attention to the offensive backfield and see what they do, because once we know who's in motion, now we want to look at the second guy to see if that movement is enough. And if we look at the quarterback, I mean, he is moving around. Technically, that is moving. He's moving his hand, his upper body, but we never want to include the quarterback, and it's dangerous to say never, because if the quarterback were to move from where he is right now in a shotgun and move under center while the receiver is moving, is in motion, that would be too much. Now we've got a shift. But the fact that he's gesturing to the motion guy to start, moving his feet around a little bit, that is pretty much the same as we had before, where A84 is moving his feet and his upper body. That's just not enough for a foul. If we look at the running back who's right next to the quarterback, it's really much more of the same. I mean, he moves his upper body a little bit, but again, it does not change anything for the defense, their coverage, their understanding of when the ball is going to be snapped. So again, it's just not enough for an illegal shift, where we really want two players to be moving a lot, or at least one of them to be going from a 2-point to a 3-point stance.
Encroachment. Regola 2.18. Encroachment. Articolo 1. Dopo che la palla è ready for play, si ha un encroachment quando un giocatore dell'attacco si trova sulla o oltre la neutral zone dopo che lo snapper tocca o simula, mani all'altezza o sotto le ginocchia, di toccare la palla prima dello snap. Eccezione: quando la palla è messa in gioco, colui che effettua lo snap non commette encroachment quando si trova nella neutral zone. Regola 7.1.3. Encroachment. C. Encroachment. Dopo che lo snapper sia posizionato, nessun altro giocatore della squadra A può trovarsi sulla o oltre la neutral zone. Eccezioni: 1. Sostituti e giocatori sostituiti, e 2. Giocatori dell'attacco in una formazione di scrimmage kick che invadono la neutral zone con la loro mano o le loro mani per indicare gli avversari.
The first thing we notice here is that the ball is nose on, which is typically or at least often the case, which gives an indicator for the receiver. So when he lines up like this, as the near receiver does, with his foot nose on, or maybe even the toes in the white, that is encroachment. It's not something that we want to call unless we absolutely have to, but there are ways that we can deal with it. One thing that the MoFo tells us is to line up with as a wing with your feet where the ball is, so that you can indicate to the receiver that for this line judge, this wing here at the bottom of the screen, his left foot would be the line of scrimmage for this receiver, so that he has something to aim at. And if you notice, when he comes out here, he already now you know that you have an issue. So you know that you want to, if at all possible, communicate with him. And right there is when you have to be ready to signal to him to move back a foot or two, so that he knows that he's lining up correctly. Because right now you're setting yourself up as wing for a difficult situation, because you're still being asked to rule on that false start by the guard or the tackle, who you now cannot see because the receiver is in the way. So again, it's not something that we want to call, but it is something that we need to deal with to avoid bigger problems down the road. This next situation is fairly similar. Here comes A88 out, and he's going to line up, and right there, he communicates with the wing at least, and this is your opportunity to visually communicate with him that he needs to move back. And if that doesn't work, verbalize. Try to talk to him or yell at him to move back. And if that doesn't work either, talk to either to this receiver or his sideline. I mean, here the wing even moves a full yard off the line of scrimmage to be able to see the interior line, which he needs to be able to see, but it would be preferable to deal with this problem even before the ball is snapped, so that we don't end up having to line up like this. So this last example is really too much. I mean, we really don't want to call this. We want to deal with this without throwing a flag. But here is an example of when enough is enough, and this is too much. Again, it's not on a full yard line, but the ball is nose on, and the receiver at the top of the screen, I mean, his foot is clearly beyond the line, which means that his entire body and his head are beyond the ball. They're not even on the ball, they're beyond the ball. So this is one that would be supported if it was called. And we still want to try to deal with it. Right there, he's looking out at the wing. So this is the time to communicate with him. And even right now, even though he is lined up and technically it's a foul at this point right now, we still want to give him a second or two to realize that he's too far up, and if he wants to move back, we can certainly live with that. But if we decide that we want to call this, and I think we should in this situation, remember that this is a dead ball foul, and as soon as the snap is imminent and this receiver or headhunter or whatever he is on this is a punt formation, as soon as we realize he's not going to move, this is the time to call it. So remember, it's not a live ball foul, it's a dead ball foul, and right now would be a good time to call it if we've decided that we're not going to be able to move him and he's not going to move himself. So again, don't call it unless it's this obvious. So 99% of the time, or maybe even more, we want to be able to deal with this by communicating with the players, either as they line up or even after the play. Let it go and then communicate with them, either with the player or the coach.
Illegal formation. Regola 7.1.4. Formazione. A. Formazione. Allo snap, la squadra A deve essere in una formazione che soddisfa i seguenti requisiti. 1. Tutti i giocatori devono essere in campo. 2. Tutti i giocatori devono essere uomini di linea o back. 3. Almeno 5 uomini in linea devono indossare una maglia numerata da 50 a 79. 4. Non più di 4 giocatori possono essere dei back. Mofo 3.6.1. Formazione illegale. A. È sempre fallo quando la squadra A ha 5 o più giocatori nel backfield al momento dello snap. La squadra A acquisisce, con questa formazione, un vantaggio sui blocchi in quanto si posiziona più lontano dalla linea dei difensori. B. È comunque fallo quando ci sono 5 uomini nel backfield, anche se la squadra A ha solo 10 o meno giocatori in campo al momento dello snap. C. Chiamare il fallo solo se il quinto uomo è chiaramente lontano dalla linea. Ad esempio, la sua testa è ben oltre la parte posteriore dello snapper. Oppure ha ignorato i vostri avvertimenti, ad esempio almeno 2 avvisi. D. A nessun giocatore è consentito di stare nella zona di campo che non è né in linea e nemmeno nel backfield. E. Siate meno fiscali con i wide receiver e gli slot back nel determinare se sono in linea o meno, rispetto a quando invece dovete giudicare un uomo della linea ristretta o un tight end. Siate particolarmente generosi nei campi dove le linee non sono tracciate in modo perfetto.
When it comes to formations, the underlying philosophy is that we really don't want to call too many of these, so it really has to be really big for us to call it. Here we've got, the kicker and the holder and the 2 wingbacks, so we've got 4 in the backfield. Everything is square, and then player number 11 comes in and clearly lines up in the backfield. So this is simply just too big for us to ignore. And that's where we really want to be in these types of fouls, is that we have to get to the point where the offense doesn't give us any leeway. The other point about this play here is that we've got 10 people in the formation right now, and the referee needs to know this. So it would be a good idea to keep somebody over the ball, and certainly as long as there is a possibility that number 11 comes in, because that is a substitution, and now we have to freeze the play with the substitution mechanic. So referee, center judge, umpire in this type of formation, you have to be aware that this is a 10-man formation, so that once number 11 comes in, we can freeze the play again and give the defense the option to substitute. But in any case, this is too big of an illegal formation to ignore. Well, the first one was a scrimmage kick. Now the next 2 clips are on kickoff formations, and we don't see this very often, but this is clearly illegal. Nobody is, except for the kicker, nobody is allowed to be more than 5 yards down or back, and here it's clearly by design, and on a short kick to this side it certainly is on purpose, and they gain an advantage from it, but the primary thing here is that it's by design, and it's very clearly, he's 4 yards back, so this is a correct call by this back judge. You see right there, he's even reaching for his flag because he knows this is going to end badly. So unusual situation, but a good pickup by this back judge. So if we compare the previous play to this play, when they break the huddle, they will pretty much always, at least technically, break the rule and be behind the 5-yard line. Now we're looking at the guy, the second guy from the top, and he is behind the line. It's not on purpose or by design like the last play. Here he almost pretty much stops his movement forward. Plus, it ends up being a deep kick to the other side. So I'm actually okay with this being a talk to or a warning instead, because it's not something that we want to go looking for, and it isn't as obvious here. Even though technically it is illegal, I'm perfectly fine with this being a talk to. We're now moving on to the offensive line, and here we'll notice that the line of scrimmage is +1. We'll have a look at the 4 remaining O-line players, and you might be able to say that they are barely breaking the backside of the snapper. It would be a stretch to say that they're breaking the hip of the snapper. So, you know, if this is very early in the game, you might be able to get away with a talk to, but if this continues to happen, this certainly would be supported as a flag for illegal formation with basically only 3 players on the line of scrimmage. But again, if you want to do the talk to, make sure that you do it you know, early in the game as soon as this happens, so that we can correct it and so that we don't allow this to happen and then start flagging it in the fourth quarter. On this formation, most of the line is actually okay, but this tackle here closest to the camera is just too far back. He's clearly 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and if you compare him to the slot back across the field, they're pretty much lined up at the same yard line. So it's a hard sell to say that one of them is in the backfield and the other one is on the line of scrimmage. So this would be certainly also supported as an illegal formation, 5 players in the backfield. In comparison, this formation is just legal. I mean, the offensive line, I mean, you can't argue that they are breaking the snapper's hip, certainly his backside. But again, as a wing, talk to these guys, use the radio to get the referee, center judge, umpire, whoever involved, talk to the coach as soon as we can to get this cleaned up, get the guards and the tackles to move up a foot or half a foot, so that we don't end up in trouble, because if they slide back just an inch or two, now we have an issue that we cannot ignore, and we don't want to ignore this. We need to address this, but a talk to here would be better than a flag. We're now moving on to punt formations, and in this punt formation, I think it's fairly obvious that at least this side of the line, the guard and the tackle, do not break the line of the snapper's hip or even his backside. So we may only have 3 players on the line of scrimmage here, and this certainly is too much to ignore, and this should warrant a flag. Incidentally, notice that with this kind of a punt, if the punt never crosses the line of scrimmage, let's say it crosses the sideline in the backfield, remember that tag on is not an option unless the ball actually crosses the line of scrimmage. Here's another punt formation, and here most of the line is actually legal, but it looks like there are 2 wingbacks, but unfortunately for the offense, one of them is actually the tackle. And we want to make these formations legal, but sometimes we have no choice. And in this case, there are clearly 5 players in the backfield, and this needs to be called the first time we see it. This formation is similar to the previous one in that we've got 3 players in the shield, and then we've got 2 players up close to the line of scrimmage that are clearly in the backfield, making this actually even 6 players in the backfield. So this is one that we need to call. There's no way for us to make this legal. So the 2 wings actually communicate well right here that this formation is illegal. The official at the top of the screen has the signal for player in the backfield, and it would be nice if the official here down at the bottom also had this signal, just to illustrate or to signal that this formation is illegal, or his player is in the backfield in any case. But there's really good communication and good flags right after the snap, correctly so. In comparison, this formation, it might be technically illegal. The player at the top of the screen there, he might be behind the snapper's waistline, but this is one where we can make it legal and leave it with a talk to. And that's really what we want to do, clean it up at this stage, get them to move up a little bit, either again talk to the player or get word to the coaches. We can use our radios to do that stuff, so that it doesn't get any worse than this, and they can clean it up and we can move on with the play and the game without having to flag these for a technical formation, and that would be, that's better for everybody in the long run. In the last 3 plays, we're looking at receivers. So first of all, this guy closest, A80, right there, he's signaling quite clearly, both by, lining up in the backfield, but also with his arm that he wants to be in the backfield. And typically, when they do that, we try to work as hard as we can to let them be where they want to be. Obviously, that's not black and white, but if they want to be in the backfield and there's any way that we can do that, we want to put them in the backfield. And here, at the top of the screen, we've got 2 receivers also in the backfield, making it a total of 5. And again, these wings do a very good job of communicating and signaling, and right at the snap, we've got a flag. Well done by these officials. So the line of scrimmage is the +1, and we've got 2 receivers coming out here. Now already we can tell that we've got 3 players in the backfield, in the backfield inside the tackle box, and these 2 receivers here, even though we want to, as much as we can, make the formation legal, here they're both lining up almost 2.5 yards in the backfield, so it's just impossible for us to make this formation legal. And the wing here at the bottom does a good job of signaling 2 players in the backfield, and we really should have, we get 1 flag, we should have 2 flags. We should have the communication across the field to get the wing at the top also to be involved, because if he sees his buddy communicate 2 in the backfield, and he can see there are 3 in the tackle box, 2 + 3 is 5, so we should have 2 flags here, but certainly this is an illegal formation that we cannot make legal. In this last formation, we have a similar situation where, the line of scrimmage is +2, and we've got 3 receivers over there that are clearly, at least 2 yards in the backfield. There's just no way, even though we want to, help the offense or help the formation as much as we can, there's no way that we can put any of these receivers on the line of scrimmage. So we end up with 3 in the backfield, 2 in the tackle box, making 5, and these 2 officials have good communication across the field. We've got 2 flags perfectly called.
Illegal motion. Regola 7.1.4. Motion. B. Uomo in motion. 1. Un back può essere in motion, ma non può muoversi in direzione della goal line avversaria. 2. Il giocatore che va in motion non può partire dalla line of scrimmage a meno che egli non diventi prima un back e si fermi completamente. 3. Un giocatore in motion al momento dello snap deve soddisfare la regola del secondo, cioè non può partire in motion prima che tutti gli altri shift siano terminati. Mofo 3.4.5. Motion illegale. 5. Illegal motion. A. Un giocatore è in motion illegale solo se il suo movimento in avanti è molto evidente. B. Un giocatore in motion con un'angolazione in avanti al momento dello snap ha commesso un fallo a palla viva.
In this first clip, we're looking at the running back for forward motion, and this is really just too much. He is moving forward as the ball is being snapped. Now he does kind of try to stop, which takes most of his momentum back, but it is still a foul, and it's still something that we need to call when it is this obviously, and this would be on the wing to see this. So here's another situation, this by a slot back, um, where the motion really, it gets her started, it gets this player started, and really creates an advantage and some speed and some impetus, and that is why this, I think we need to call. And again, this would primarily be the wing. They are primarily responsible for motions of this sort, and they would have the best angle to call this. It'd be difficult for, even though it happens in the backfield, for a center judge or referee to see necessarily if this motion is forward or not. So the wing at the top of the screen would have the best view to this, and this should be a foul. We're now moving on, and we're looking at the running back here to a couple of examples where he might be technically moving forward at the snap, but it's so little that we can certainly let this one go, and the wings do a good job of that here. I mean, he wants to be going sideways. He gains no advantage, and it's so marginal if he is in fact still moving forward. The angle might be slightly towards the line of scrimmage, but this is a good no call. Here's another example of a player who might be moving slightly forward at the snap, but again, it's so little, especially because, but I mean also because he moves into the flat. If he were to move down the field, it'd be a different story because he might gain a bigger advantage, but here, certainly as he moves into the flat, there's absolutely no advantage gained, and you could certainly argue that it's very, very marginal how much he's actually moving forward at the snap. So I think this is a good no call. Be absolutely fine with this being a talk to if you have a chance, but again, a good no call. Here's another example of a motion that might technically be forward, just slightly, but where we can certainly, leave it with a talk to either to the player or the coach, or if we can, both. I mean, now with the radios, it's fairly easy to get a message across the field to the other side, just to let them know that you can't be moving forward at the snap. But I think this is small enough that we can let it slide, and this is a good no call. On this one, we're looking at the quarterback, and you don't usually associate motion with the quarterback, but here when he does that, he has to make sure that he actually stops completely before he snaps the ball. Obviously, he wants to get up there and snap the ball quickly. Notice that it's third and short, so when he does that, typically it's going to be a quarterback sneak, but I think he does a good enough job of freezing for just a hair, so that it's not a motion anymore. Keep in mind that a motion doesn't have to be followed by a second. That's only a shift where you have to have a full second afterwards. But of course, this would all be moot if we had noticed the fullback there flinch before the snap, causing a false start. But in any case, I think this is a good no call on the quarterback for illegal forward motion. Before we move on to the other category, here's the final play of forward motion, and this is actually perfectly legal. It's just an illustration of how it sometimes can look worse than it is. It could appear that he's moving forward at the snap simply because he's, that's just part of his normal movement is to go forward right there. But if we snap it right there, the ball is starting to be snapped, and he's still moving sideways, and then not until after the ball is snapped does he start to move forward. If we compare it to the 20-yard line, he's still at the 20-yard line as the ball is being snapped, and then he moves forward. So this is a perfectly legal play that sometimes can trick officials. These last two plays deal with motion from the line of scrimmage, and here we're looking at the receiver going to the top of the screen, and it's fairly clear that he wants to be on the line of scrimmage. I mean, the wing up there even has him off, and then he moves up 2 steps. So it's hard to indicate him or to have him off the line of scrimmage. So he's on, and now he goes into motion, which is fine until the ball is snapped, and then it becomes a foul, and it should have been called in this situation. So if you have the receiver, try to make them legal, but if you have him on a line of scrimmage and he goes into motion like this, this needs to be called. But of course, as we'll see in this clip, it only becomes illegal when the ball is snapped. Here the guy goes in motion and then he stops completely and we're fine. So there's no doubt that this guy is on the line of scrimmage. He goes into motion, but then he stops. Everything is fine. Legal snap, legal play.